After the release of Sony Santa Monica's God of War, I think the majority of gamers and PlayStation 4 owners expected that to retain its position as the biggest PS4 exclusive game release of the year, both critically and commercially. Even when I contested that there might be a little game by Insomniac that had potential to outpace it, a lot of you scoffed at that notion. Thought that it was absolutely impossible. Well, here we are 8 days after the release of Marvel's Spider-Man, and while reviews of the game came short of God of War scores, we'll go over that in depth later on. As far as commercially and sales numbers are concerned, the early indication is that Marvel's Spider-Man is absolutely crushing God of War. Well, would you look at that? Looks like that I was onto something, and we'll go over the early statistics in a little bit, but I want to explain how I came to this conclusion even prior to the release. First of all, for the last couple of years, if you actually analyze where Sony has put a considerable amount of their promotional muscle, it's been revolved around Marvel's Spider-Man. Dare I say they have promoted this game even more so than God of War. They even gave the game the coveted last game shown at their E3 showcase earlier this year, which is a little atypical, considering if you look at E3 past showcases are usually concluded by games that are a little farther out, a little bit more of a surprise, but in this case they showed off a game that was only 3 months away from releasing, and that was their lasting image from E3 ahead of even Last of Us Part 2.
Why is he letting everyone out?
I'll head for the main control center and see how bad the situation is.
Got it. I'll go join the party. Everyone just quietly go back into your cells and lock the door behind you. Okay? Please?
Second, one barometer that I have always kept track of, and as a YouTuber it's kind of hard not to notice this, but when you look at the view counts for various Spider-Man gameplay videos on YouTube, the metrics are absolutely insane. Numbers that you see very few other games hit, if any, and those metrics were far ahead than anything God of War was putting out. We're talking double or even triple the view count. Now, some might say YouTube isn't the best barometer to gauge a game's potential success, but then I would question why not. More views indicates more exposure to the game, and that just means a higher ceiling for sales, and that was a little element the game had going for it that not a lot of gamers noticed. I'm positive, however, Sony had noticed that metric, and that's why they put so much promotion towards Spider-Man. And lastly, as much as the gaming world loves God of War, and don't get me wrong, I love the game too, it really is just that. God of War is a franchise that is contained in the gaming world. If you're a gamer, you know God of War, you probably love God of War, but it's a game that hasn't really transcended into that super mainstream audience where everyone and their mother knows about it. Spider-Man, on the other hand, is one of the world's most notable IPs ever. And just after seeing a quick 30-second commercial for the game, it's hard not to be captivated by it. You don't even have to know the background of the game, that this is a Spider-Man game being developed by Insomniac, one of the world's best studios, because unfortunately the mainstream world does not know who the hell Insomniac games are, but the promotional material was done in a way to capture even the most casual of audiences. While with God of War, let's just be frank, it's very gruesome in nature. There's gonna be a section of the audience that is already turned off, namely parents looking to get their kid a game, but with Spider-Man it really hits just about every demographic, male adults, kids, hell, even women, and again, it's just a much more known IP than God of War, and yes, in the gaming world, God of War is heralded as this big franchise, and it is a big franchise all things considered, but if you actually step out of that bubble, you know that an IP such as Spider-Man is so much more recognizable. So all of that was just going into the release of the game, but now it's been a little bit since Marvel's Spider-Man has been released, and some early metrics are coming in. How well is the game doing? Well, very well, and it is crushing the bar that God of War set. Based on UK sales chart, thanks to Games Industry, it is the fastest selling game of the year in the UK. And actually, prior to Spider-Man, Far Cry 5 had held that title, but bear in mind that that was a game released on all platforms versus just the PlayStation 4. So that's pretty impressive that Spider-Man, a PS4 console exclusive, outsold Far Cry 5, a game that was available on a wide variety of different platforms. Well, outside of Far Cry 5, how did it compare to the next best-selling platform exclusive title? Well, that was, of course, God of War. But how far apart were they in sales? Based on early numbers, again, in the UK only, Spider-Man has beaten out God of War by nearly twice as many units sold in the same time frame. But how far apart were they in sales? Based on early numbers, again in the UK only, Spider-Man has beaten out God of War by nearly twice as many units sold in the same time frame. Yeah, that might be a little bit of a shocker. I expected the game to sell well, but to beat out God of War 2-1, that's something I wasn't expecting either, and I more so expected Spider-Man to be a game that sold well from the get-go, but not this well. but that it would also gradually grow in sales and it would be a hot holiday item where a lot of parents are buying this game for their kid. Maybe they're buying a PlayStation 4 and this is their go-to game to buy as an add-on. That's what I was expecting. I was not expecting the game to do so well right out of the gate, and I do fully expect that this will still be a hot holiday item, so the sales numbers are just going to continue to grow, and when 2018 actually wraps up, I can see this game just having incredible sales numbers, close to some of the other bigger game releases like Red Dead Redemption 2 and Fallout 76, but bear in mind that those games are once again multi-platform titles, so I don't think Spider-Man is going to outpace an RDR2 or even a Fallout 76, but it should do very, very well going into this holiday. Okay, so those were based on the UK sales numbers, but we also have the Japanese sales chart, and Spider-Man was at the top, and it considerably outsold God of War as well. Now, we still have to wait on domestic sales numbers, but based on these numbers and anecdotally what I've been hearing about the game, the fact that in my personal life and what I'm hearing on YouTube, I'm seeing more and more people buy a PS4 as Spider-Man is a legitimate system seller to them, even more so than God of War, and usually the UK and the domestic numbers are parallel with one another, so I foresee Marvel Spider-Man doing very, very well over here in the States. Now, at this point, I've kind of made out God of War to sound like the worst selling game of all time, and that's not the case at all. Up until prior to Spider-Man's release, it was far and away the best-selling PlayStation 4 exclusive. It's just that I know so many of you thought God of War would comfortably hold that position, and I think the majority of you thought that Spider-Man would sell well, but nowhere near this well. Hell, these numbers even outpace what I was thinking. Everything I'm saying is really more of a credit to how big of a game Spider-Man has become, rather than it being a slight on God of War. Now, sales are great and all, but how do these two games hold up from a critical standpoint? Well, considering that God of War has an incredible 94 Metacritic score, I knew from the get-go, even if Spider-Man is good, a 94 is just a score very, very few games hit. You really have to be an elite level of a game to hit that threshold, and Marvel Spider-Man did fall a little short of that 94. Not to say it's being panned or anything like that, the game has a very respectable 87 on Metacritic, and many are calling it the best superhero game ever, and bear in mind, this is Insomniac's first foray with a Spider-Man game, and if you played through the entirety of the game, you'd know that it's probably not their last either. And the foundation they've set mechanically, the game is there, and it can only get better from here, so starting the franchise off with an 87, that's very, very good. This kind of reminds me of what Guerrilla has done with Horizon Zero Dawn, and while that game also isn't perfect, we know that there will probably be more entries, and the foundation that they set with that franchise is really good, and that's all you need when you're kicking off a new series like this. At the end of it all, it's more of a fun comparison. Both of these games are on the PlayStation 4, and it's a point where the Xbox One's offerings are rather lackluster, and we are pitting PS4 exclusives against one another. And I think that's more fun than making this into a gigantic war. I've always been of the notion that with the PlayStation ecosystem and the first-party studios, even though Insomniac isn't a first-party studio, they're kind of like that cool uncle that is always welcomed, but in this case, it's iron sharpening iron. Both from a critical and commercial standpoint, these games are propelling each other to do better and better, and these studios have even more pressure to deliver a high-quality product because the standard has been set so incredibly high. And for the gamer, that's really the best-case scenario. It would be even better if Microsoft was putting out incredible exclusive after incredible exclusive, and then it was everybody raising the bar higher together, but alas, that's not the case right now. Hopefully at some point we'll get there too. So that is going to conclude this video. What do you think? Are you surprised with how well Spider-Man is doing commercially? Were you on my boat from the beginning and expected it to be an absolutely massive game that would top God of War from a sales standpoint? Of course, God of War is still ahead when you look at the review scores, but regardless, whatever your opinion is, we want to hear it. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comment section down below. That's going to conclude this one. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Just yesterday, there was a store robbery, a shootout, and a runaway vehicle, all in the same day. And what do you think they all had in common? That menace in tights, Spider-Man.
Hey, fellas.
Well, did you think that maybe he was trying to help? It feels like there's more and more crime every day.
I'll say, and it's all because Spider-Man thinks he's some kind of spider cop. You know what cops don't do?
The boy's true nature, your true nature, fights within him.
Hang on!
Think I'm afraid of you! You're nothing to me!
Boy,
Nothing!
Don't make this.
This video is sponsored by the fine folk over at SCD Keys. On this channel, we're always talking about saving money and getting great deals, and that's what you can do by picking up a $50 PlayStation Store card from SCD Keys. If you head over to their website, link is down below, and search for a $50 PlayStation Store card, you'll find it. Go ahead and add it to your card, and use our specialized promo code GC3 to save 3% on your order. That'll bring the cost of the card down to $46.64. You can check out and choose your method of payment. Your key will show up on your account, and boom, just like that, you got a $50 PSN card a little bit cheaper. Not only do they have great deals on PlayStation Store credit, they also have Windows 10 and other software heavily discounted, and you can get great deals on those as well. Again, check out the link to SCD keys in the description box below.